Most people think they'll notice the moment their job is replaced by artificial intelligence. They imagine a dramatic email, a viral headline, or a sudden layoff blamed directly on automation, but that's not how it's actually happening. In reality, AI is changing jobs quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. And that's exactly why so many people don't realize how much their work has already changed. In 2026, very few jobs have disappeared overnight because of AI. Instead, tasks have vanished. Responsibilities have shifted, expectations have changed. People are still showing up to the same roles, with the same titles, but the nature of what they do each day is no longer the same. This subtle transformation is far more significant than dramatic job replacement, because it reshapes careers without giving people time to emotionally or mentally prepare. Take writing, for example. A few years ago, writing was about starting from a blank page. Today, many writers start from an AI-generated draft. The job hasn't disappeared, but the skill set has shifted. The value is no longer in typing fast or producing large volumes of text. The value is in judgment, taste, clarity, and the ability to shape raw material into something meaningful. Writers who adapted became more productive. Writers who didn't felt left behind, even though their job technically still existed. This pattern repeats across nearly every industry. AI doesn't kick the door down and take over. It slips in quietly and starts handling the parts of the job no one really wanted to talk about. The repetitive parts, the boring parts, the time-consuming parts. And once those tasks are gone, what remains looks very different from what people originally signed up for. In offices around the world, knowledge workers now spend less time gathering information and more time deciding what to do with it. Research that once took hours now takes minutes. Reports that once required days of preparation are assembled in an afternoon. Meetings happen faster because summaries already exist before anyone walks into the room. None of this feels like job loss, it feels like acceleration. But acceleration changes pressure, it raises expectations, it compresses timelines. And slowly it reshapes what it means to be good at your job. In customer support, AI hasn't replaced humans entirely, but it has changed the role from answering questions to managing exceptions. Simple issues are handled automatically. What's left are emotional, complex, or unusual cases. That means support agents deal with more intense interactions than before. The job becomes less repetitive but more emotionally demanding. Fewer tickets but higher stakes. Again, the job still exists, but it feels very different. In software development, AI hasn't eliminated developers, but it has changed how they work. Writing code from scratch is no longer the primary bottleneck. Understanding systems, reviewing AI-generated code, debugging edge cases, and making architectural decisions now matter more. Junior developers can move faster, but only if they understand what they're building. Those who rely blindly on AI struggle when things break. The quiet shift here is that thinking matters more than typing, and experience compounds faster than ever. Design has gone through a similar transformation. AI can generate layouts, icons, images, and even entire brand concepts in seconds. Designers are no longer valued just for execution. They're valued for taste, consistency, and the ability to say no. The job becomes more about direction than creation. Designers who understand storytelling and user psychology thrive. Those who only learn tools feel squeezed, not because AI replaced them, but because it changed what the job rewards. Marketing didn't disappear either, it fragmented. AI generates copy, headlines, ads, and visuals at scale. The marketer's role shifts towards strategy, positioning, and interpretation. Data floods in faster than humans can process manually. The skill is no longer creating content, but deciding which content matters. The quiet change here is that intuition without data feels weaker, and data without intuition feels hollow. The job sits in the tension between both. Even fields people assumed were safe have changed. Lawyers use AI to review contracts and summarize cases. Accountants use AI to flag anomalies and automate reconciliation. HR teams use AI to screen resumes and draft policies. None of these professionals vanished. But their daily work now involves supervising systems, rather than performing every step manually. The risk isn't replacement, the risk is complacency. When people stop understanding the underlying work because AI handles it, they become dependent rather than empowered. One of the most overlooked changes is how AI affects entry-level roles. These roles traditionally existed to teach fundamentals through repetition. AI now performs many of those repetitive tasks. That makes it harder for beginners to gain experience the old way. Companies expect junior employees to be productive faster because AI fills the gap. This raises the bar quietly without changing job descriptions. The result is frustration for newcomers who feel underqualified, even when they're technically doing everything right. At the same time, people with deep expertise gain leverage. They can use AI to scale their impact dramatically. One person can now do the work of several, not because they're working harder, but because an AI amplifies their decisions. This creates a widening gap, not between humans and machines, but between humans who know how to work with machines and those who don't. Another quiet shift is how performance is measured. Output increases, so expectations rise. Faster turnaround becomes normal. What once impressed now feels average. This creates a subtle pressure that many workers struggle to articulate. They're more productive, but they don't feel more secure. In some cases, they feel more replaceable, even if replacement isn't actually happening. The psychological impact of AI is as significant as the technical one. Remote work has also been reshaped by AI. Communication tools summarize meetings. Project management systems predict delays. Collaboration happens asynchronously with AI filling gaps. This reduces friction but increases surveillance. Work becomes more measurable, not always more meaningful. The quiet change is that visibility shifts from presence to output. This benefits some workers and stresses others, especially those whose value is harder to quantify. Creative industries feel this tension intensely. AI can generate music, art, video, and scripts at a speed that overwhelms human output, but abundance changes value. When content is everywhere, curation matters more than creation. The job quietly shifts from making things to choosing what deserves attention. Creators who understand their audience thrive. Those who rely on volume struggle to stand out. Education is changing too, not because teachers are being replaced, but because the role of teaching is evolving. AI tutors explain concepts endlessly without judgment. Teachers become guides, motivators, and interpreters. The job becomes less about delivering information and more about shaping thinking. This is powerful, but it requires a mindset shift that not everyone was trained for. Healthcare workers feel AI's presence in subtle ways. Documentation is automated, diagnostics are assisted. Scheduling is optimized. Doctors spend less time on paperwork and more time with patients, at least in theory. But they're also expected to see more patients faster. Efficiency gains don't automatically translate into reduced workload. They often translate into higher throughput. The quiet truth is that AI doesn't negotiate. It doesn't unionize, it doesn't ask for balance. It simply raises the ceiling. Humans decide whether that ceiling becomes freedom or pressure. In many workplaces, it becomes pressure by default, not because anyone is malicious, but because systems optimize for output. Another understated change is how people learn skills. Instead of memorizing procedures, workers learn how to ask better questions. Prompting, verification, and critical thinking become essential. Knowing how to work with AI becomes part of professional literacy, like knowing how to use email once was. Those who resist this shift aren't replaced immediately. They just become slower, then less relevant, then quietly sidelined. What makes all of this difficult is that there's no single moment when someone can say, "Hey, I changed my job." It happens gradually. One tool here, one workflow there, one expectation adjustment. And then one day, people look back and realize their role no longer resembles what they trained for. This is why fear-based narratives miss the point. The threat isn't a robot taking your job tomorrow. The threat is waking up in 5 years and realizing the job you have rewards skills you never developed. The opportunity is the same in reverse. Those who adapt early gain flexibility, leverage, and options. AI also changes how careers progress. Traditional ladders flatten. Advancement comes from influence rather than tenure. People who can translate between technical systems and human needs become invaluable. Soft skills don't disappear. They become more important, not less. There's also a cultural shift. Asking for help from AI becomes normal. Struggling silently becomes optional. This democratizes some forms of competence, but it also exposes gaps more quickly. When everyone has access to powerful tools, excuses disappear. This can be empowering or brutal, depending on the environment. One of the quietest but deepest changes is identity. People used to define themselves by what they did. Now, what they do changes faster than who they are. This creates anxiety. If AI can do part of my job, what is my value? The answer isn't technical, it's human. Value shifts toward judgment, ethics, creativity, empathy, and responsibility. AI doesn't replace meaning. It challenges people to redefine it. Work becomes less about labor and more about contribution. This transition is uncomfortable because systems weren't designed for it. Many organizations are still catching up, experimenting, failing, and adjusting. The future of work isn't human versus machine. It's human plus machine with all the complexity that partnership implies. Power dynamics matter. Access matters. Education matters. So does mindset. The people who struggle most with AI-driven change are not the least intelligent. They're often the most rigid. They mastered a system that no longer exists. The people who thrive are not necessarily the most technical. They're the most adaptable. AI is quietly changing jobs by changing what matters. Speed matters more. Thinking matters more. Learning matters more. Static skill sets matter less. Titles matter less than impact. And this shift is still unfolding. There's no single villain here. No single solution either. Just a slow, relentless transformation driven by tools that don't sleep and systems that don't pause. The question isn't whether AI will change work. It already has. The real question is whether people will notice in time to change with it. Because the quiet changes are the ones that last.